When I ask you guys to just go through your mind about this idea of anger and the notion that I really want you to try not to use that word, but let's try a different word, maybe a phrase. We'll say dealing with intense emotions. Because, you know, a lot of us get turned off to that idea of being angry, don't we? When somebody always asks you, are you angry? I don't know about you, but typically it puts you on the defensive. And the first thing you're going to say, no, I'm never angry. But interesting enough, ask your friends if they think you have an anger problem. Ask your friends, people that can tell the truth, people that you trust, and listen to the answer. I will be ready for the answer. Because the true measure of whether I'm really angry or not is not from your point of view, is it? It isn't from your point of view. It's to the point of view for those people that surround you and observe you and watch you. And a lot of times, the measure that someone uses of you being angry is your facial expressions and your body language, but it's not necessarily your words. Not so. You can have a boss who you really think is angry, and he didn't raise his voice, but he did that, you know, furrowed brow and gave you this sort of, yeah, fine, whatever you want. And you sort of get the feeling that there's some subtle undercurrent that's going on that you're not in tune with. You ever had that feeling? I have. That you're working with somebody that's above you, or somebody you're working with that's, you know, equal to you, but you get the feeling that there's something uncomfortable, some undercurrent going because they won't talk about it. And when you deal with this idea of intense emotions, and in this case, it's just the awareness that you don't think you're intense, or that you're aware of it enough to know that those around you present themselves in ways that really kind of makes you curious and doubtful. It affects your security in relationships. If you think the relationship's in trouble and you ask your partner how we're doing, and you don't get a overly zealous answer with fine, you know, yeah, you might find yourself bringing flowers, making time after work that you didn't make time before because there was innuendo. Subtle characteristics in your pattern of communicating that that person is aware, oh my God, you know, there is something going on. But you don't realize, most of us as men and women too, that in an emotionally intimate relationship, I have gotten to observe you across the board, at home, at night, on weekends, after work, during sports games, during comedies, during movie theaters, and I've observed you when you really weren't aware you were being watched. And I've picked up on those little signs, those little tidbits of information that indicate you're not all right. And then I use that in my understanding of you when I communicate to you, because if I see some reflection of those identical characteristics, I begin to feel uncomfortable because I say, oh my God, this is happening again. So the notion that you have to be aware that you're angry, and in being aware that you're angry, know that they're aware of you're angry, you need to kill that one right away because it's not true. A lot of times you know you're angry, but you think you're not showing it. Classic example is what? The silent treatment. I just won't talk to you. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you, and that's going to be enough punishment for you to understand that I'm angry. Of course, later on, when somebody tries to challenge you about that, what do you say? I wasn't angry. You deny it. So it causes a lot of confusion. When we look at relationships, I'm really important with this notion of, do you have the right to be angry? Because that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you on your end of course test. Do you have the right to be as angry as you want to be? And when people answer that question, typically they'll say, yes, you have the right to be as angry as you want to be. I'm going to warn you. I don't think that's true. Because remember I said relationships. I don't think you have the right to be any more angrier than your partner is comfortable with. Think about that. I don't think you have the right to be any more angrier than your partner is comfortable with. Because if you begin to think that you can absolutely come unglued, do things like throw things and curse and yell and scream, and you think it's your right to be as angry as you want to be, then you better be prepared for that other person to exercise their right to be away from you. Because I also have the right to not live in this household. Remember we talked about roommates? Mm-hmm. Roommates share space. What happens when you dominate the shared space in such a way that I don't feel good about myself? What happens when I live in a shared space and your demonstration of hostility and aggression is so ridiculously absurd to me that I make a mental note that I think you're a blazing idiot? And what happens when you go home and that partner that you think you're sharing space with on a more lengthy contract, if you will, verbal contract or whatever, is gone? I have a class called Dumpers and Dumpies, and Dumpers and Dumpies is just about that. What happens when the person that is in your cohabitive relationship makes the decision to get away from you, but because of the way you've exercised intense emotions in their space, understand what I'm saying? Because the way they've observed you exercising, yelling or screaming or cursing, whatever the heck it is, they've made the decision, I'm not telling you that I'm leaving. Because if I tell you I'm leaving, the feces is going to hit the oscillating airfoil. The shit hits the fan. So they make a decision. I'm going to get out of here when you're not knowledgeable that I'm packing my bags. So that when you come home and now everything's gone, and you start to say to yourself, boy, I've been betrayed. This is unfair. This person was secretive. And you find out later they told their girlfriends or their brothers or their sisters or their aunts, or they told everybody they were intending to leave. Now you're really pissed because the notion that the betrayal was programmed or planned and executed starting weeks ago. You find out mail's been changed. You find out that the boss knew you were moving and maybe you got a day off. And you start to put all this together, and now you feel more betrayed. But without reflectively looking back to say, why would a person do that? Why would a person arrange their life in such a way, in such a secretive way, as not keep me informed, and to deny the real reason, which is the idea that I just didn't trust this wasn't going to be a big blowout. I mean, that has to go back on you. And we call that suppressed anger. That is the person that's fearful of you, but angry at you, but can't talk to you because they have this fear. In the conflict styles, we sometimes consider those people avoiders. Sometimes those people are considered accommodators. You know, it's interesting because I get men all the time, and women too. They're absolutely astonished. Why would my partner who's an accommodator, I understand why the avoider would run like a rabbit, but I don't understand why the person who's an accommodator would bail out that way. Well, you have to understand the nature of what an accommodator is. An accommodator, what? They put your needs above their own, and they give you till their wallets and their spirits and their emotions are drained. And then subtly inside, that idea of when is it my turn and I never get my needs satisfied builds up to the point, get that? I feel like I'm giving, but you're not paying back, you're not paying back. And part of the accommodating style is when the person says, let me do something for you. Well, you're so used to giving, what do you say? No, thank you. So then the other person's more confused. I tried to give back. I tried to compensate you, but you refused. See, that's part of their disease too, right? The idea that I give and give and give and don't expect things back, that's not healthy. I mean, I had this incident this past week that was interesting, but one of the kids at one of the schools here was bringing money to the school and giving money away to all of her classmates. And I got sort of involved with that, and I asked, well, why would you do that? And she said, well, they needed money. Now, I got the principal who obviously got things straight and sort of collected the money back. But the idea that even a child at a very young age is out there trying to give to others to get from them what? Position and status. See, when you give, and you give, and you give, what do you get? You get a status where people think, oh my God, look at that. You're so special. You know, you're someone that I want to be around. Happens at an early age. But back to the story about where now you go home and everything's gone. Can be an avoider. right? And it can be an accommodator. There's other styles it could be. There's 6 conflict styles. There's 4 other possibilities. One is a competitor. Well, competitors they don't just walk away. They want to win. So before they leave, they want to have that argument where I can't win that argument and I'm going to blow out of here because now you've gone too far and you've said things that you should never say. Competitors, remember, competitors listen to collect information to prove you wrong, and then they let it all out at you. So that could have been one of those styles too. And if you do look back at your relational history, a lot of people do have relationships that end that way. It seemed like their partner had to create an incredible argument to get justification to leave. Okay? And then we have agitators. And agitators are not like competitors. They're kind of one-up. They're like the computer on turbocharge. Because now I'm not just listening to prove you wrong, but I'm also listening to degrade you and destroy you. To mar your personality so that I give to you this notion that you're something wrong with you. And you might say things like, you treated me just like you treated your ex. And now I know why she, do you see how do you change, how do you fight that kind of stuff? So agitators want to destroy you. Understand there's a couple in here that do work, collaboration and compromise. Collaboration, we work together to work it out. I let you know that your anger really bothers me and I don't know what to deal with it. Or compromise, you work out some type of arrangement through bartering. Hey, look, when you get angry, why don't you put up a flag and take a time out, and while you take a time out, I'll do this. So you work out some kind of arrangement. But as you look at conflict styles, you think about what I just said to you about this idea of relationships and intense emotions. You don't have the right to be any angrier in displaying your nonverbals, your verbals, the words you use, all of it. Remember, 4% of the meaning in your communications is only the words. Only 4% are the words you use. 57% of that meaning comes from your facial expressions and your body language. And you all know that to be true. I mean, I'm sitting up right here, I'm talking to you, and I can look you in the eye and say, yeah, I love you. Now, if you saw the written text, you'd say, I love you. But if you saw, the glib facial expressions, and yeah, you realize I didn't. And of course, there's another part of this meaning, and the other part of the meaning that we're worried about has to do with the way you say things. The voice inflection or the loudness of your voice. Now, this is important. I want you to realize that this applies to every day of your life. See, I get text messages all day. And what are text messages? Just words. Just words. I really can't decipher good, bad, or emotional components from just a text message, can I? So a lot of times you'll see me text somebody, please call right away. Because I don't want to put anything on here to alarm you. Right? I don't want to put in there, child is sick, must go to school right now, because you can read into that, oh my God, broke a leg, fell down off a jungle gym. I mean, seriously, so you just say, call me right away. But that's only 4% text messaging. Well, what about when you actually talk on the phone? Well, you got words, right?
Yep.
And you got voice, right? But guess what they don't see? Body language. I was on the phone with somebody not too long ago, and I had to ask them to stop yelling. And they said, I'm not yelling. Well, I think back reflectively, that's happened to me. When I've been on a speakerphone, and we got people on speakerphone, I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's the right way, because I'm on a speakerphone. And I'm thinking I got to talk louder to get it across, because it used to be those old boxes, not the way it is today. And then I've heard people say, well, could you just calm down a little bit? I'm sorry. I'm calm. But you see where your voice can project emotions that truly are not there, right? And then finally the idea, it's because that's it, but they can't see your face. That's why video conferencing is such a good deal these days. People say, why do I need video conferencing? I mean, that was my first thought. Why don't you isn't talking on the phone enough? It's not. Because when you're talking about corporate leadership, or you're talking about businesses and mergers and finances, I really want to see what you look like. I want to see your mannerisms and how you talk. I don't want to just hear that voice inflection. We've learned video conferencing works because it gives you the whole picture, doesn't it? So what I'm asking you to do right now as we deal with this topic of dealing with intense emotions, rate yourself in your abilities to remain calm or not experience or express intense emotions, not from your own point of view, but try asking people that you trust. Do I come across angry? when maybe I'm not. Offer that suggestion and kind of see what kind of answers you get. Okay?